a experimental video. So, I made melon juice at the weekend for drinking. I'll show you. I've made it before. There's a video. It's somewhere probably under drinks or fruit juices. Yeah. So the melons were cheap on the market, and they're like £1 a piece. So I just kind of thought, what I'll do is I'll make some melon juice as a drink to have in the fridge. What you do is you puree the melons, and then you let it the liquid then pass through a cloth, and you're left with some solid, like the solid bit that's left, and all the water kind of goes through and makes a refreshing drink. And then I kind of thought that I normally just put the pulp onto the compost, and then because I've been faffing around with jams and pectin and all those type of things, I was kind of thinking, could we actually make some jam using the leftover pulp from the watermelons? It's got the seeds in. I was going to have a go at sieving the seeds out, but it's a bit. It was going to take forever, and I just couldn't be bothered. So we'll use the pulp, and we'll add some sugar. So there is 400 grams worth of pulp, and there's 300 grams worth of sugar, and then there's 4 grams of the homemade pectin as well. So I thought that might be kind of like an interesting way of using some things up. So I don't know if it will work, but as we're using pectin, and we use pectin in fruits that to make jam with fruits that haven't got particularly a lot of natural pectin in them, it might work. So I'm curious. It was just it just seems a shame to waste it, and there's a little bit of flavour in that. What does it taste like? There's a little bit of flavour. So it's just an out of curiosity thingy. So cook it, see what happens. I don't know if it'll lose its colour because we're cooking it. It might do. It might not work. But it'll be kind of quite curious to do it, because I've made some jam out of some weird things recently, so I can't see why it won't turn into jam. It might need some more liquid in it. It might be better of buying a whole watermelon and kind of cooking the water out of it. It certainly would have intensified the flavour, but it just kind of seems like it's a bit of a waste if we're going to put that on the compost when we might be able to turn it into something like jam, which would be kind of quite interesting. Think. But anyway, I'm curious. I don't know. I'll have to research at some point what it is about pectin that wants to make what the difference between something like pectin is and what something like a natural thickener is, like cornstarch or corn flour or arrowroot or agar, or those type of things. What the kind of difference is between them, like a gelling agent, that type of thing, because they all kind of do a similar kind of job. So I was just kind of curious. So cook that slowly, see what happens. Might add a bit of water, but just kind of curious. Can't particularly see that particularly well. We should maybe get another light on that. Oh well, when we come back. But let me see. There we go. That's a little bit better. I thought the light was okay, but it's because the sunlight was shining through my window. But anyway, we'll give it a go. We'll see what happens. I'm curious, so therefore someone else must be. Right, that's had about 10 minutes of cooking, and I think that's gone jammy. I think it looks like it. I don't know if that's just down to the sugar. It's not. It's quite fibrous, so it's not going to have a smooth texture of a jam that had liquid in it. So I'm going to call it more like a compote, but that might have gone jammy. Excuse fingers. It's kind of got a jam kind of jam taste. How does jam taste? I don't. Well, it depends on the fruit, obviously, doesn't it? But There's no kind of liquid kind of coming out of things. Might have been better if it had been properly pureed. Put through a sieve, because that's kind of quite fibrous, but I don't know if it had gone through a sieve. Tell you what, well, I'm not going to put it in a jar, because to my mind this is just an experiment, and I'm not going to kind of use it on anything. Needs a bit of acid. Yeah, definitely jammy is that. Needs a bit of acid. Let's there we go. Orange or lemon. Let's put some lemon in. Ideally, I think hard lemons. Ideally, I think lime works best with watermelon. There's just certain fruits that require a different acid, and I think watermelon particularly goes well with lime, but it just needs a bit of acid in it. When you get better at cooking, it's not just about technique, it's also about tasting things and knowing when something needs a little bit more salt, a little bit more pepper, a little bit more acid, or a little bit more cooking or umami, or just something like a little bit of heat is one of the things that you get used to doing. Tasting as you go along. Yeah, it tastes better for the lemon, a bit more. Oops. It just counterbalances. Like having applesauce with pork, and the applesauce cuts through the richness of the pork. Think along those kind of terms. And sometimes things can be too sweet and they need a layer of sharpness in them, just to counterbalance that, just to kind of make it a little bit more interesting. Otherwise something just tastes sweet all the way through, which is not what you want. It's better with the lemon. Right, so I'm not going to do anything with it. It's quite nice, is that? I'm going to jar it up. No, because I won't do anything with it. It'll just sit in the fridge. It'll just sit in the fridge. And I won't know what to do with it. I've got no one I can give it to. So I'm going to have to do something with it. Actually, I'm going to do something with it next week. In fact, I will be able to do something with it next week. Let's see how that turns out. So, put some filling film over the top. No, I'll use a plate. Let's put a plate over the top and let that cool, and then we'll kind of see how it turns out. Because things taste differently when they're hot and when they're cold and when they're frozen. So something tastes different when it's hot, as opposed to what it tastes like when it's room temperature, as opposed to what it tastes like when it comes out of the fridge, as opposed to what it tastes like something out of the freezer. You get different. It just tastes different. Like certain things taste more like sorbets and things are more. What's the word I'm looking for? More like giving like a more concentrated flavour when they're out of the freezer, as opposed to what a sorbet tastes like before you put it in the ice cream machine or the churning freezing machine. But anyway, so we'll see how that is. We'll let that cool to room temperature, and they'll taste it, and then we'll have a go at tasting it at in the fridge as well. That'll be kind of quite interesting. Well, I'll find it interesting, and doing things that I find interesting is what it's all about, in the same way that you should be doing things that you find interesting, you know, and sod everyone else. Right, let's have a look. I think that looks a bit jammy. It's certainly got a consistency of jam. at room temperature. It certainly tastes jammy. It still tastes watermelony. Well, that works, doesn't it? I think. I think it would taste more watermelony if I hadn't taken off the. Sorry, I'm doing something else at the same time. If I hadn't extracted all the liquid from it. So, even though there's not that much flavour, well, there is flavour in the liquid, but it would intensify it as you kind of cooked it down. So. Yeah, I think I'll have to. What surprise! I'll have to do another recipe at some stage. I think I'd have to just put it into a container while I'm talking. I think. I mean, this. I've just made it from like a waste product, really. I think if you were to kind of make it from fresh watermelon, it would be a little bit different because you'd have to evaporate off. Or get rid of the water, and I don't kind of think faffing around with pureeing melons and then straining them through the cloth just to make a jam, which might not be everyone's cup of tea, seems a little bit ridiculous. But from an experimental point of view, that's kind of quite interesting to me. And it kind of begs the question: what else could you make jam out of? I've heard of carrot marmalade, so that's not that dissimilar. And I have, I'm sure there must be pumpkin jam. There must be pumpkin jam. Someone must have decided at some point in time that they can make some pumpkin jam, and certainly make it like a pumpkin spice jam. I will do some googling and we'll kind of see, but that works. You know, it's jam, and it tastes like watermelon, which is kind of quite interesting. I don't know what you'd use it for. I'm not saying it work particularly well on toast, but it's interesting, and it works. So there we go. Watermelon jam. Or jelly, depending on which part of the world you're from.